I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for Investment Pitch Media and FinTech News Network. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Lior Yaffe, blockchain developer and the co-founder of Jelurida. Lior, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be here.
Hi, Ashton. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
I'm really excited for our discussion today. I know you've been a blockchain developer for quite a long time. You developed the NXT blockchain. Now you have the Ardor public blockchain and the Ignis blockchain. I want to focus today on the Ardor protocol, and then we can dive more into the Ignis technology afterwards. So if you could start with us by explaining what is the purpose and the vision of the Ardor public blockchain, that would be great.
Okay, great. So we started blockchain development. You can track our development back to 2013 with the launch of the NXT blockchain. I mean, I joined a bit later, but we took the NXT blockchain, which was the first proof of stake blockchain, and made it into a product that can help, that can implement some of the basic use cases of blockchain, like decentralized messaging system, ability to record account properties, a decentralized exchange voting system, privacy features, and so on. However, around 2016, we started to understand the limitations of the traditional model of single blockchain with single token of value, like you see today in Bitcoin and Ethereum. The problem is that blockchain, the traditional model of blockchain has some kind of self-destruction mechanism, so that if it becomes very popular, it also becomes very expensive to use, like we see today with the leading blockchain product. It becomes clutter, it cannot scale. It can still be used as a store of value, but for functionality, it's no longer serving its purpose. So it became apparent that you need a more advanced structure of multichain, where the consensus itself is handled by a relatively light blockchain that we call Ardor. And then you can have multiple child chains, each one with its own token of value. The first chain of this is Ignis. This structure gives you many practical advantages. First, it's about scalability, because transactions that are on the parent chain are related to consensus that must be stored forever, like on the other blockchains. But transactions on child chains can be stored temporarily and later can be pruned with storing only proof of their existence in the parent chain. Another operational advantage of the multi-chain architecture is that it is simple for businesses to sponsor the transaction fees of their users, which is a big problem in almost any blockchain application today.
That's really interesting, Lior. And yeah, Ethereum right now, especially with all of the network, every node has to verify every transaction, and it's getting expensive and it's getting slow. And this is an interesting approach with this child chains. Now, you mentioned that there can be multiple child chains, and you also mentioned you don't need to verify with every node doesn't need to verify each transaction. Is that right?
No, right now in the current architecture, every node still needs to verify every transaction. However, every node does not have to store the full history of the blockchain. A new node that joins the network can get a snapshot of the existing state, think about balances from another node or several nodes, download it securely, and then only catch up, let's say, the last 24 hours of transactions to get to the tip of the blockchain. So joining a new node is simpler. One of our future visions is to be able to partition the multi-chain into subnets where you can decide that your node is only interested in specific child chains and ignore the rest of the child chains. It's a feature that is in the roadmap, and we thought about it quite a bit, but for now we decided not to implement it until we are absolutely sure of its operation and that it is really needed.
Now, this, for people that are using transactions every day on the front facing, obviously it can get quite technical. So do people need to understand multi-chains, or that their transactions are only going to a certain child chain, or the network just works automatically on the back end?
Yeah, what you need to know as a user is that basically when you will be using a child chain, because all the applications are on child chains. You need to know which child chain you're using, what token of value it is managing, and that's pretty much all you need to know. The rest of how the system is working is transparent to you. You don't need to be you don't need to know how the bundling process that synchronizes the child chains and the parent chain works. You don't even have to worry about paying transaction fees, since the business that operates a child chain can sponsor the transaction fees for you. So theoretically, you don't even need to know that you're using a blockchain.
So one of the advantages of Ethereum is that because there's a lot of nodes, it's supposed to be more secure, and it's also more decentralized. Right now, with these child chains, I'm guessing that there's less nodes, and does that sacrifice security or decentralization at all?
We put a lot of emphasis to have lots of nodes that are supporting Ardor. Right now, we have close to 1,000 nodes distributed globally. Of course, it's less than what Ethereum has. I mean, we still have less users for sure, but I think we have a sufficiently decentralized network at the moment. So I'm not worried about the number of running nodes. And from time to time, we also do some incentive plans for running nodes, so that to encourage users to set up more nodes, because we believe that it's very important that we have lots of nodes for decentralization.
That's great. And do you see a face-off and a trade-off between having high scalability versus having more nodes and decentralization, or does that actually not really work as a trade-off on the Ardor blockchain?
No, there is certainly a trade-off. I mean, a truly decentralized blockchain, Satoshi-like vision, will never process, let's say, more than 100 transactions per second globally. And it's not like, you can call it the Yaffe law. Okay, it's not like the Moore's law that improves by 2 every year and a half, because the limiting factors are the speed of light and things that you cannot control. So truly decentralized network will never reach more than, say, 100 transactions per second. And that's what we see in practice with Bitcoin, Ethereum. Ardor can also probably do 100 transactions per second. But on the other hand, you hear all these fantastic figures from everybody. I can do 10,000, 1,000, million, and so on. So the trade-off is you can trade off decentralization for scalability. I mean, you can say, okay, I limit my deployment to 21 nodes that are somehow already in controlled environment and probably cooperating with each other. And then I can improve scalability because I know that they have very strong servers, and I know what will be the sequence of block generation between them, and so on. So you trade off decentralization for performance. But then you can take it to extreme and just use a single database. Okay, so what are we talking about? The main advantage of blockchain is that it is decentralized and not controlled by a single entity. And there is still lots of things you can do with 100 transactions per second, assuming that you can also have layer 2 and databases backing your solution and so on.
Definitely. Great answer. And now you also mentioned that there are some privacy functions as well, and it's interesting in a public blockchain and sort of necessary for financial privacy, because at least in Bitcoin, if you send a transaction, you can just look in that wallet and see every transaction that they've
Yes.
had and their whole bank account, essentially, which it seems a little bit, invasive. And so one of the functions, the privacy functions, is this coin shuffling. Now, can you talk about what is coin shuffling, and is it really advantageous for people to use this function in the public blockchain?
Yes. I mean, unlike privacy coins like Monero, that everything by default is shuffled and hidden and mixed up, on Ardor, this kind of mixing is optional. Mm-hmm. You can take your child chain tokens or asset tokens on the child chain, let's say tokens that will be used for voting, and you can send them on to an on-blockchain shuffler, and the shuffler basically creates on the other side fresh accounts without history that contains the funds, and use the keys that you provided to the shuffler. But someone looking from the outside cannot tell whose entry funds cannot associate you with your origin account and the new accounts that you received with the new fund. So you start with the fresh history. So this limits the way people can track what you're doing on chain. It's actually it's based on a paper released by some famous cryptographer, and it's operating. It even operates since the NXT days, I think, since 2015.
Okay, that's really interesting. And do you think that people see those functions, sort of like in Monero, where it's a dark coin and privacy coin, that it attracts nefarious activity, or is it more just for financial privacy, and people that are doing totally legitimate activities just want to make sure that they have their privacy of their own funds?
Okay, so let's start with this coin shuffling mechanism is really, really cool. I mean, as a software engineer, it's a real achievement to have an on-chain shuffler on a public blockchain. Mm-hmm. I would say that certainly I don't want it to be used for illegal activity and money laundering and so on. I view it as a privacy feature because you do need some level of privacy. Mm-hmm. It also not designed, let's say, for really hiding your activity, because there's still some leakage of information. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be used partially for partial privacy, but again, we are not aiming for the privacy-focused blockchain users, but more for the general blockchain developers that need some privacy features.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. Now, one of the main functionalities of Ethereum's public network is the smart contracts and dApps, and being able to have all this functionality programmed into these autonomous contracts. Now with Ardor, you have lightweight contracts, which are similar to smart contracts, but they're supposed to be safer and better and faster. And can you talk about the differences and why they are better and faster?
Yes, so we have a different design approach than Ethereum. I mean, in Ethereum, you can write a smart contract for every use case. You can do it the right way, and you can do it the wrong way, and then lose funds, lock your user funds, and so on. In Ardor, we take a different approach. The basic smart contracts, we design the basic smart contracts, like secure messaging, account properties, and on top of that, we build for you some of the smart contracts, like the asset exchange that we talked about, the shuffling, and so on. These all can be considered smart contracts, multi-signature, and so on. So, and this way, I mean, instead of some third-party developer trying to roll on their contract with all the risks, the main contracts are developed by the core developers. Mm-hmm. We provide you access to it as what we call transaction types, abstraction, and open APIs where you can use these contracts. The lightweight contracts is a layer of automation on top of these built-in APIs. So it is more limited. You cannot just decide that today you're giving your users 1% interest and tomorrow 99% interest, and you cannot program a backdoor and so on. So you are limited in some sense to what we already built into the platform, but you are guaranteed that your contract cannot be hacked because of a technical failure. Of course, it can still be hacked because you didn't keep the private key, but that's something.
There are a lot of blockchain solutions that are currently being implemented because of the pandemic. And to talk about, the real world solutions that Ardor and Ignis can provide to solve real world problems, have you considered what are the best use cases for the technology?
Yes, actually, the current pandemic provides some excellent use cases for blockchain. It's something that we still need to educate the market so that they realize how blockchain can help. But the idea of blockchain is that it's all about enabling third parties that do not trust each other to cooperate. And as you know, everything around this pandemic stems from public trust. Okay, it's even more than the medical problem. It's a matter of managing the public, and if the public trusts the government, trusts the health organizations, and so on and so on. And now think about the vaccines, for example, that companies will start shipping next month. This needs to be cooled to minus 70 Celsius. I mean, there are surely going to be multiple parties involved. I mean, the manufacturers and the factory and the transport and the healthcare who handles this. How would you track that everybody actually cooled the vaccines properly? How would the public, there is already a lot of mistrust around vaccines in the general public from all sort of wrong reasons, in my view. But this will be multiplied now with rumors, conspiracy theories, and so on and so on. But if all of these stakeholders that do not necessarily trust each other, sometimes they will be competitors, if all of them will use a global ledger to record their actions, that every transaction is digitally signed and time-stamped, then you'll have perfect tracking of what happens to a vaccine from the time it left the manufacturing line until it's actually injected to a person. Okay, and then think about what would happen after that when people who are already vaccinated should be free. Okay, they should be free to roam the world. But when you land in a foreign country, how would they verify that you are actually vaccinated? I mean, of course, you can bring some kind of weird certificate from your local health authority and so on. But then you need agreements between the countries, lots of politics, lots of organization. But much better if you can prove using a global ledger that everybody can access that you actually got this batch of vaccination on this date, and that this batch of vaccination left the factory in India 3 weeks earlier, and so on, and many other people got vaccinated with the same. And so this is actually a great use case for a public ledger. Convincing the pharmaceutical companies to use it and the governments to trust it, that's a whole different story. But
Definitely, yeah, no, so the supply chain, it seems like that's one of the top priorities right now, and being able to track and trace from the source to any primary and secondary locations into the final destination. Yeah, and the global identity platforms as well. So it's definitely great to be working on those kinds of solutions, and hopefully, yeah, we can get past the regulation and the barriers to entry to actually get the technology implemented so that it can solve these kinds of problems. So that's great, Lior. Now, we're running out of time in the interview, but if there are people who are interested in learning more about Jelurida's technologies and Ardor and Ignis and trying it out, what's the best way for them to learn more and to get involved?
Okay, so we build our products as a blockchain, as a development platform for decentralized application. You don't need any permission to use our products. All you need is install the software, download the testnet blockchain, and you can ask someone for testnet tokens and start using the APIs to build your application. We provide you best-in-class documentation, and of course, always available on talk.jelurida.com for any questions that you might have. Yep.
Great. Okay. Well, I will leave the links to your platforms in the description box below. Thank you so much, Lior, for taking the time to come on the show. All the best, and let's follow up in the near future.
Thanks, Ashton, for having me on the call. Thanks. Bye.